and welcome to the format roundtable meeting for December 8th, 2022. And I'd like to remind everybody that this meeting is being recorded, and we will call the boards to order starting from the west. Mr. Allison.
Great. Thank you, Tanny. James Allison calling the Penn One board meeting to order Thursday, December 8th, 2022. Start with Claudia Campuzano.
Present.
Great, thank you, Claudio. PJ Christopher.
Present.
Annalisa Kohler.
Present.
And Jeff Noodleman.
Here.
James Allison is present. We have every board member and we have quorum. Thanks, folks.
Okay, and Val Humble.
This is Val Humble calling Penn 2 in order. I understand we can be in order even if we don't have quorum. Val Humble present. I see Eric's there. Would you speak up, Eric?
Eric Molander present.
I don't
Okay.
see Mary Helen Kincaid or Karen Myers or Kathy Kellen. Any of you others present? We do not have quorum, but we're in order.
Oh,
We'll try to stay orderly.
Kathy is present in the room.
Kathy Kellen present. Hi, Val.
Oh, thank you. Didn't see you, sorry.
That's fine.
Mary Helen will be joining us online at some point.
Yeah, okay. So you do have quorum, great. Okay.
We'll have.
MCDD, Nikki Schultz.
As Nikki Schultz calling MCDD. And I think Penn Anderton and Kelsey are both out. So Corky Collier.
Here.
Darian Sander.
Present.
So we have quorum and are in session.
And SDIC, we have Annalise Kohler
Present.
and Channy Staffordson is present, and we do not have quorum. And the JCA board is already in session. Okay, and so with that, we will roll right into the first item, which will be the
Board is closed. Oh, you're in session.
Yeah. And that's okay. All right. Matt is up.
Good name is Mr. Matt.
So I'm having.
Adjourned.
There's no pad for the computers. Some technical difficulties, sorry. Yeah, just changed them a second ago too.
This is Val Humble, wanting the video minutes to note that Mary Helen Kincaid has joined us. Welcome, Mary Helen.
Thank you.
While we're dealing with the technical challenge, I'll take Executive Director's privilege to announce that the United States Congress passed the Water Resources Development Act earlier today. And our project is in. And so congratulations to everybody. Good news.
It's very good news. Thanks for the update.
I didn't hear what the update was and I have my hearing aids in and turned up full volume.
Let me try again. The United States Congress has adopted the
Oh, okay.
version of the Water Resources Development Act that includes the Portland Metropolitan Levee Study Project. So we are
Okay.
authorized for construction.
It sounds good even the second time. Thanks, Jim.
On to the United States Senate. It was the Congress. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I see James. has a hand up.
Okay, James, Allison, did you have a question?
Yeah, just a moment of levity before Matt Berlin starts his presentation. I want to clarify for everyone that that is not the PIR pump station that we're looking at.
Thank you, James.
Thank you. Okay. We good? Okay, go ahead.
It's my barn, actually.
Thank you for the levity, James, and the almost introduction there. And I had on my notes to say good afternoon because we're right at the edge, but good morning, everyone. For those that I have not met, I'm Matt Berlin. I'm the emergency planner here at the Multnomah County Drainage District. I'm happy to be with you today. Thanks for your time today, and thanks for reading through the materials that we provided in advance of this meeting. As a group, you've heard about this topic several times, and over the last few months, we've made significant progress towards a draft plan. So this is a point of movement in this process, and we are here to talk about it with you today and get you informed. So we're going to share an update. I am going to share an update and request your approval to advance our contributions of the plan for public comment and then on to state review and FEMA review with the intent to make it easier for you to adopt the plan down the road. So I want to make sure there's time for questions, so we'll just jump right in. If you don't mind moving to the next slide, Wendy.
The mouse works.
Oh, great, good. Today we're just gonna, the primary goal here is to provide or to prepare board members for this phase. We want you to feel informed and have what you need to support the plan's adoption when the time is right. To do that, we've provided the memorandum that summarized the background, project planning process, and the recommendations we've provided. We've shared the draft chapter that covers the Columbia Corridor drainage districts. And then today we'll provide an overview of the county plan. We'll review the planning process in a finer detail. We'll outline the plan from a district lens. We'll provide an overview of mitigation strategies, of which you saw the details in the memorandum and the chapter we provided. And then we'll outline some of the next steps. On to the next slide, thanks. Looking back, again, this is a bit redundant for those of you who have really clear memories of all the format meetings that you've attended in the past. But we wanted to provide a bit of an overview again to remind you what we're talking about. So the purpose of a natural hazard mitigation plan in this context is to document known risks and extensive local hazards in our community, and then establish an action plan to address those natural hazards that will then put us in a position to secure and maintain eligibility for federal mitigation assistance to address those natural hazards. And so in this situation, we're working with within a federal framework that puts these pieces together. And in our situation, we're doing a multi-jurisdictional process under the county. To the next one. The current county draft that we're talking about today will renew the 2017 plan that you've heard about in past format meetings, and my predecessor Brian has brought to you a number of times. It will cover multiple jurisdictions and multiple hazards, and only this year it's going to expand to include new jurisdictions. That's the Columbia Corridor Drainage Districts and the Port of Portland. And this will all go out as one larger package for public review over the next few weeks, likely in January. See, so this is not your typical plan, and I want to draw attention to what makes it a little bit different. This is necessary for us to be eligible for funding. We need to have our own plan to apply for natural hazard mitigation assistance, or we need to work with an entity that does. And in this case, we are moving forward to put our own chapter into the county plan so that we have more flexibility to do that on our own with our own priorities and with our own direction. It's not a regulatory plan. There are no specific steps to meet specific objectives that we are held to. The strategies put forth are not binding. There are no obligations to meet them. The content in the plan is flexible and it can be updated regularly. And the multi-jurisdictional format of it allows us to really tailor our strategies to our local priorities. Move to the next slide, thanks. So within this plan, the county plan covers natural hazards that face partnering jurisdictions across Multnomah County. So that includes floods, earthquakes, fires, landslides, severe weather, volcanic hazards. Does not include things like coastal erosion or tsunami or human-made disasters or terrorism or hazardous chemicals that are covered in other plans. But each participating entity is impacted by these hazards differently. And that's what makes the multi-jurisdictional plan so interesting for us, is that each entity's strategies are subject to their own respective statutory authorities, and each jurisdiction is assessed for vulnerabilities to each hazard. So in our case, we're able to really focus on the hazards that are concerning to our authority or within our authority, which would be in the flooding category of this. Okay, and you can move to the next slide. Thank you. So the plan itself is large and it covers a number of different hazards as mentioned, and then other jurisdictions that don't involve district business. The outline of the plan then provides a little bit of context for where we fit into it. The introduction provides the overarching framework about what it means to have a natural hazard mitigation plan, some of the aspects of FEMA's guidance and the framework that we build off of in this plan. The community profile includes a description of the area's geography, climate, demographics, socioeconomic factors, land use, infrastructure, et cetera. Once we get into the third section, which is based on hazard identification, we start digging into what hazards are we talking about, what is the history of these hazards in this area, what prompts us to look at these hazards in particular, and then starts to set up the framework for looking at each jurisdiction. Section 4 talks about what all the partners have done to engage the community and receive public input on the work that we're putting forward. And then once we get into Section 5, we're really talking about specific jurisdictional work. And that's what we provided to you as an attachment to the memo this past week, Chapter 5E, which is the drainage district section. Can you push the forward button just to see my nifty animation on that slide? Or the mouse button is fine. There you go. So that was a bit of a big build up there, but section 5E is the drainage district section. That's the section that matters to us. That's the one that spells out what we'd like to accomplish as far as putting a strategy forth. And it lists out not only the risks that we see in our district and the things that we think are important, but also talks about the actions we think could mitigate some of those risks down the road. The final section in the plan, really quick, is about plan maintenance and implementation. So it's just how it's done, how we move forward, the way that the steering committee for the plan operates and meets on a regular basis to keep the thing moving. Mind moving to the next slide. So the real special part about this working with a multi-jurisdictional plan is that we're working under the county, and the county has taken on the administrative burden of putting this plan together. So we don't have to put all of the effort and staff time into coordinating our own natural hazard mitigation plan, which is a large amount of work. And so since the county has taken that on, we've been able to really focus on what's important to us and make sure that it fits within the larger framework. But it meets our needs and our requirements based on our authority to limit what we're talking about to what we'd like to accomplish as far as flood mitigation and natural hazard mitigation planning. So during the plan's development, we have some minimal obligations to commit to public engagement, which we have done. We have some obligations to develop individual mitigation strategies that reflect local priorities, which we have done. And then finally, we have the obligation to formally adopt the entire plan in order to become eligible for funding. And that's why we're here. This is a step towards that, much needed step in order to get through the next phase of the process, getting your input and approval today to move forward. During the planning cycle, we'll participate in the steering committee, provide amendments for significant changes. We'll work to incorporate some of the mitigation actions that are in this plan so that they show up in other plans that are aligned with this work. We'll be required to report on progress towards our mitigation actions, and then we'll highlight changes in our priorities as we move forward. Another really great aspect of this plan is that on the regular basis, we can update our priorities as they reflect current conditions and as conditions change. You can move to the next slide. Thank you. So there's a lot of really great benefits here, and this may sound redundant because I'll mention it a few times, but we will gain through this process, and we have gained through this process, much improved understanding of natural hazard risk to the districts. We have a much better awareness of natural hazard risks as it pertains to the public. And it gives us, through these mitigation strategies, gives us an opportunity to build that relationship and develop that education further. We have a lot more proactivity in mitigating high-risk hazards. So the fact that we can tie together a lot of the priorities that we have in different buckets and orient them under natural hazard mitigation allows us to really look at being strategic in how we think down the road or in the short term, which is the best way to prioritize our work and where the opportunities are to secure additional funding for that work. In addition, taking this information, we're incorporating public input into our priorities going through this process. So the fact that we've gone out to the public, we had a survey last year, we received a lot of information back, and that influenced the mitigation strategies that we put forth in this plan is important. And finally, as I said, increasing the access to federal funding for local mitigation actions, it just gives us more options to find support for the work that we'd like to accomplish. The real important piece here, and if you again push the big reveal again, that there's no obligation to complete the strategies in this plan, and no obligation to approve the strategies or do them in an order of priority. We have a lot of flexibility to do this work, but we're not obligated to take it on. Okay, you can move forward. So just a quick review of how the planning process looked. And again, I started 6 months ago, so I'm coming and looking backwards at all the great work that's happened with not only my predecessor, but a lot of folks here. That the first attempt to annex into the existing county plan, that would be the 2017 plan, started in 2019. Staff were not able to complete that process, and the effort was postponed or put on hold. We reinitiated the process in 2021, and in that process received approval to represent both the 4 districts here as well as the new district on the steering committee. Last fall, we did a public survey where we did not only mailers, but digital surveys and gathered a lot of information and brought that in, and that influenced how we developed our mitigation strategies. And there were a lot of really great responses. I think we received a couple of hundred responses from folks, and a lot of them were by mail that indicated where their priorities are. And we can see those in the mitigation actions as part of this, a part of our chapter in this. Go ahead and move forward. The centerpiece of each of the jurisdictions' chapters is the strategies that they've developed to mitigate natural hazard risk. And in ours, we currently have 40 strategies that have been derived from our capital improvement needs, district drainage master plans, studies that we've conducted or studies that we've been a part of with funding and funding sources, and then that community input from the fall 2021 surveys. These are written broadly to provide flexibility in the opportunities that we've been able to be less specific, to open up more flexibility around what kind of work that we can pursue, what kind of work would be eligible under this plan once it's adopted. And what we're able to do through that internally is we've got, as part of the evaluation process that FEMA puts together, we're able to assign priority based on cost, benefit, risk mitigated, equity value, management capacity. And that helps to join in that broader framework and communicate our internal priorities to FEMA and to the state as they review our plan. And again, that prioritization is not binding. It won't dictate how the actions are implemented, but it does give us a language that we can use to communicate with our both the state and the federal governments. Move to the next one. Thank you. So I just provided a few slides that just give an overview of some of the things we're talking about. If you read through the chapter 5E, you would have seen the more detailed actions. But some of the things that we're trying to talk about here, system maintenance and improvements. I think that was the top community input theme, was to prioritize system maintenance and improvements. So looking at supporting the work for recertification and maintaining the levee system accreditation, seismic upgrades for facilities and hard infrastructure. As you know, we're also doing quite a bit of planning work, emergency action plan updates, the development of a continuity of operations plan, as well as evacuation plans. The next slide. Supporting study and analysis, again, more seismic analysis of pump stations, inundation modeling, looking at analyzing houseless community impacts to levee system. That was the third training for exercises and emergency preparedness, and making sure that our staff are getting adequate emergency management jobs. All eligible under the next slide.
The sound went away.
Hear me now? Okay.
Say like ICS.
Sure. So the last item I was talking about was supporting, can you hear me now? Yes, okay. So the last item I was talking about supporting training for in all kinds around emergency management training. And so continuing our incident command system exercises and then providing more specialized emergency management and job shadowing opportunities. So really wanting to continue to support that work. Thanks, Wendy. You can move next slide. And finally, looking at monitoring. So looking at things like upgrading some SCADA system upgrades, looking at increased seepage and flow monitors, so we can continue to keep track of what's going on out in the field. Looking at outreach and education, working with the community, building up education around emergency preparedness and response, looking at things like signage, developing areas for rendezvous locations during evacuations, building relationships with community organizations around that. When we face that emergency, those relationships are going to be really key. And this is an opportunity to really develop those relationships further and engage more folks on this topic. And finally, looking at resiliency and redundancy, looking at backup generating power to prepare for power outages, enhanced security, those kinds of things to keep our system running and to keep it protected. So you can move to the next one. Thank you. So the current request we have is that the boards review and approve the draft Columbia Corridor Drainage District chapter that we provided in this packet this week in advance of the public review period, which is not finalized, but I expect that it will be in the month of January and then or later December, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be in January based on conversations I had this morning. After that, the process is very circuitous, and I will try to explain how it works really quickly, although the important piece is on the left side of the screen here. But once the public review is complete and revisions are intact, then the county will send the plan to the state for review, and then there may be some revisions. Once it's approved there, it will go to the to FEMA Region 10 for review. Once FEMA and the state are comfortable with it, they will issue an approvable pending adoption, and then it needs to come back to the boards for adoption. And that's when we will have the opportunity to move forward and be eligible for funding. And so the whole purpose of coming to you in August, all the times before that, today, and possibly again, will be to make that step of the process easy for you because you've been informed and you're aware of what's in the plan now, and you're able to adopt the plan without any concern. So I'll end with just one more slide, sorry. I'll end with just some summary and then some recommendation. That this plan really has one really strong positive to it, and it's greater access to natural hazard assistance. We have very low risk to the districts by joining and low administrative effort for our staff, for me and our staff. There's no obligation to complete actions in the plan or approve or support actions proposed by partner jurisdictions. This is really about our component of the plan and what we want to get accomplished. There will be several opportunities to revise the plan in draft form or after the draft is adopted as our priorities shift. And so if you don't mind pushing the button one more. So our recommendation is that the board support the plan in the approval and adoption phases of the process. When the adoption phase is timed right, we'll be back to ask for that adoption. And that's all I have other than questions.
Okay. Questions for Matt? Nikki Schultz.
Once the plan is in place, I assume we're going to go through, approve and adopt it. Is there a frequency that this plan will be reviewed and updated?
I believe it's annually, but I'm sorry. The overall plan is a 5-year plan. Thank you. Thank you, Hong. Yeah. The shorter or the longer answer is that the steering committee will have the opportunity to make revisions and update on a more regular basis.
Anything else, Nikki? Anyone else have any questions?
Got one question here.
I just, sorry.
Hang on, Mary Helen.
Okay, sorry. I'm still having a hard time hearing.
No worries. Hey, Mary Helen, this is Kathy. I'm curious about the type of financial assistance that is available. Has there been a situation where it would have been useful to have access to that prior? And how much is there through the federal hazard assistance?
That's a good question. Do you want to take that? Welcome.
Kathy, it's as if I had you planted this question with you. And I think James Allison is on call, so he can verify this. At the Penn One PRI pump station, we have had to rely on the city as the grant applicant because we don't have a plan of our own. And if we had a plan of our own, we would have been able to be the direct grant applicant for that money. So what that means is ultimately we just have to negotiate an IGA with the city of Portland to administer the grant funding from FEMA to the city to us to fix that pump station. So there's a real, so that's an example of a concrete project in which if we had the proposal, Penn One would have, if we had the plan, Penn One could have been the direct grant recipient.
I can add, so we also. So we did do a pre-app for the FEMA's Building Resiliency and Infrastructure in Communities grant program, which is a new grant program that specifically you need to be either annexed in or have your own natural hazard mitigation plan. We did work with Multnomah County to submit a pre-app, but we had to, again, work through them. There is more than $2 billion available for grants in that, both planning assistance and actual construction. And so that will be an annual appropriation of about $2 billion. That's part of the Inflation and Infrastructure Reduction Act there. So there's billions of dollars that you really do need to tap into, or you need to have this plan to tap into.
Follow-up question. Is there a limit on the amount of money that an entity can obtain under different grant programs? And then also, is it based upon type of project, frequency of emissions?
Short
Repeat the question.
Oh, yeah, I'll do a short answer and then kick it over to Matt. Matt, the question from Kathy was if there are restrictions on the amount of money that can be requested for the different grant programs. And there's a number of other FEMA hazard mitigation programs that are available. So the short answer is yes, there is a limit. And I'm going to kick it over to Matt, who probably knows more about the specifics.
I don't know the specific answer for the limit. But my immediate sort of response to your question was that while there may be limits, there are more grants that we can apply for, and adhering to any type of match requirements, we have more access and more flexibility with those grant opportunities, I think, than we're capable of trying to accomplish at this point. And so there's a lot more available for us than I think we would want to take on. And really at this point, we just want to get the plan adopted. Then the idea of applying for which grant and what we're applying for is a whole other conversation. But it's a good question, and I'll see if I can find more information and follow up with you.
Thank you.
Mary Helen?
I thought I heard my name, but my question has been I think the plan's great. I think the concepts, but there's a lot of we, and my curiosity has always been, as we've gone through this over the last couple of years, is who's going to be on the spot pointing to people, go do this. I mean, who's going to be the person in charge? And that was never clear in 1986. And I was witness to a couple incidents where everybody stood in a circle and pointed to each other, the county DEQ, state, Dave Hendricks, nobody had true leadership to turn around and tell everybody else what they're supposed to do and what their responsibility is. So I guess my concern is we had an incident before this mitigation plan goes into effect and everybody gets grants. What happens? And after it, will this mitigation plan make it any better for on-the-spot coordination in the case of an event?
Sure. I think I may ask for some other folks to answer, but my feeling is that the simplest answer is I think it depends on what we would like to implement as far as a project goes. From a program standpoint, I think as an organization, I think we've been able to coordinate this process so far. So how we position ourselves to be eligible for funding and be more flexible to prepare for and respond to natural hazards, whatever that may be. I think the overarching plan and the guidance for that plan is on us, with information from the boards and with our staff and with community input. Through that, we can identify projects to take on that are across the system and would rely on a number of different approaches depending on what that project is, depending on what the risk is, and depending on what the approach is. So I think that's getting to what you were asking, but I want to see if Colin, did you have a?
I did, and Mary Helen, I think it's a great question about in an actual emergency event, who is responsible for what, I think is the kind of core of that, of your question. And we participate in the Regional Disaster Preparedness Organization, and Matt sits in on a number of groups where that is really the key part of it. So the county and the city really, City of Portland really are on point for leading a lot of things. We at MCDD and your staff practice our incident command system. We have an incident management team that is called the Action for Smaller Events. We coordinate and liaise with the other organizations so they're aware if anything elevates. But if something, if we needed to evacuate people in Penn 2, the county and the sheriff's office would do that. So we have those things coordinated, and we're going to continue to work to make sure that those roles and who is doing what is more clear. But we are well beyond where we were in 1996, and we're well beyond where we were 10 or 15 years ago. So we're making really good efforts there, and this natural hazard mitigation plan is really about analyzing and knowing what are likely mitigation strategies, and then really being responsive to those needs. So if we can find grant opportunity to pay for some of the sort of mitigation or hazard reduction investments, we can leverage state and federal funding using this natural hazard mitigation plan. So this really is about not in an actual emergency event, but being really proactive and thinking about ways that if we are in an emergency, they're less destructive.
I think it's a great idea, and thanks. That clarified a lot for me.
Thank you, Mary Helen. James?
Thank you. Just a couple of quick comments. I do want to underscore Matt's comment about there's an additional layer of coordination and administration when the city or the county has to partner in order to apply for these grant funds. We're happy to do it, but it required a lot of coordination in the grant application, and will also in the administration. So this will be an improvement when the district can go after these funds directly. When we applied for the hazard mitigation grant program for the PIR pump station, there the grant administrators at the State Office of Emergency Management indicated they were eager to receive our proposal, and that the available funds were probably close to sufficient to cover the applicants applying. So that indicates that in some cases there's money available if you have your act together and you have a proposal that meets the grant requirements, grant interests. So I think this is great that we're doing this. Two last things. As the new district starts to put together its needs and looks at covering existing gaps, I think this is a key part of it to be able to continue the improvement that Matt has described, that Colin has described, by having a plan, a dashboard, and availability to implement, by having the staff to do that, by being able to leverage those staff efforts with external funds is going to be key to continuing to improve the system. Lastly, I apologize if I missed this. Matt, are you, how do you want people to comment?
Well, so initially we sent out the chapter last week as part of the board packet. We have time to comment. And again, I'll go back to I think it was my earlier slide about how this is a bit atypical. We've got lots of opportunities to provide feedback on the content of the plan, especially if there's something substantive. For today's purpose, I think what we'd like to focus on is a general approval of the chapter or any significant concerns about the chapter. And if none, to move forward with an approval of it so we can include it in the public comment period. To be specific about your question, I will welcome any and all comments in any form. If you want to track changes in the chapter that I sent, you're welcome to, and you can send that to me. If you'd like to summarize in an email, or you can call me personally and we can talk about things that you've spotted in there that should change.
Okay. And I just had a couple of follow-up questions. You said that we'd be able to change this along the way. I could just see when we go marching this into a municipality to get them to sign off on it, that the council looks at it, says, okay, we don't like number 7 and number 9. So we'd be able to adjust those at that time.
That's correct.
Okay. And I think it's good, but we've got 40 strategies in there. That's quite a few for a plan.
It is.
Especially when we're not committed to them. I'm just not sure quite how that's going to work. And the other thing is, I guess I'll just ask the elephant in the room. How come Portland's not on this?
Portland has their own.
Okay. Well, all right. And then looking at page 12, you're talking about the effects of a lahar, right? And we're talking about SDIC and MCDD and talking about it ending at about 158th, and you're getting into Portland. And then in the next paragraph, it talks about that outside the zone and not expected to suffer lahar impacts. So are we thinking this thing's going to like stop at 158, or, or it's just going to be minimal impact after that?
I think that's based on the USGS model that was used for that. And part of that was referenced from sort of the county's framework for this plan. What's tricky about reviewing this chapter is you don't have the 500-page plan around it in order to reference. And I think that's where that's coming from. I'm happy to look a little more carefully at that and talk with the folks at the county to see if we can get that figured out. I think when I looked at the map, I think it's looking at the spatial dimensions of the lahar on the risk map. And it's looking at where it's roughly located.
Yeah, the stuff that I've seen in the past, it would blow out the SDIC pump station and the levees, and it would keep going, and it wouldn't necessarily, check a street as it's going by and stop or anything. I just think we could have serious impacts going further west.
That's a great thing to
what
look
we
at.
have to
I'll
look
make sure
at.
to put that on our list.
Okay.
Get a good eye on that.
That's all I have. Okay, and with that, you are looking for approval, right, today? Okay.
Approval for release for public comment.
Okay. All right, and if there's no more questions, then we will move to Pen 1.
Thank you, Tanny. Is the motion to approve the natural hazard mitigation plan for public review? Is that the motion?
Our chapter of the National Hazard Plan.
Okay, let me see if I can do this.
If you have the memo, there's the staff recommended motion. I don't know, Wendy, if you want to.
It's in the first paragraph. It'll take me a moment to pull up, but I think actually I can.
Is it
share
the first paragraph, page 2?
Yeah,
It's page-
I've got it, James. I'll go ahead and move that the Pen 1 Board approve the draft Columbia Corridor Drainage District section of the Multnomah County Multi-Jurisdictional Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan.
Second.
Sorry, I'm doing too many things at once.
I'm gonna go ahead and second that. Thank you, Jeff. Okay, we have any discussion before we vote? Okay, do a roll call vote. Claudia Campuzano,
Vote aye.
PJ Christopher,
Aye.
Annalisa Kohler,
Aye.
and Jeff Noodleman.
Aye.
James Allison votes aye. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, Pen 2.
This is Val Humble for Pen 2. Is there any discussion for the supervisors of Pen 2? Do I hear a motion from Pen 2?
I move that we approve the draft Columbia Corridor Drainage District section of the Multnomah County Multi-Jurisdictional Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan.
Thank you, Eric. Do I have a second?
I'll second it. I think
Thank
I'm
you,
the
Mary
only one left.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote. We'll start Mary Helen,
Aye.
Kathy Kellen,
Aye.
Karen
say
Kellen,
yes.
okay, Karen is not here. Eric Molander,
Aye.
Val Humble votes aye. All present supervisor vote for the plan that is passed for Pen 2.
All right, MCDD.
MCDD, I'd take a motion from the board.
Darian, I'll move that MCDD approve the draft Columbia Corridor Drainage District section of the Multnomah County Multi-Jurisdictional Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll do a roll call vote. Corky Collier,
Aye.
Darian Sander,
Aye.
Nikki Schultz votes aye. Motion passes.
Okay, and SDIC will defer this due to lack of quorum till our meeting later in December. Okay, and at this time, we can adjourn for Pen 1 if you wish to.
Great, thank you. Pen 1 is adjourned. Thank you, folks. Have a good day.
Val Humble for Pen 2. Pen 2 is now adjourned.
All right. And we will adjourn JCA. Okay, and now it's just MCDD.
There's lunch.
We're remaining in session, or we're gonna call a new session after lunch?
We'll recess for lunch.
We'll recess for lunch and let's give you a half an hour for lunch. So 1:05, if MCDD member is not present, could rejoin at that time? That would be great.
Okay, so it's designated feeding period.